Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today what we're gonna do is we're gonna make the Bon Appetit's BA's Best chocolate chip cookies. The recipe for this will be down in the description, but I figured I would come on here and show you guys this recipe and kind of talk through it a little bit. There is a video that Bon Appetit put up for this, but hopefully it'll still be interesting to watch. These are my favorite cookies. I make them honestly now like once a week because I'll go home and my parents like want them immediately. I literally made them last night, so I almost have this recipe completely memorized. But today I'm actually going to be doing the measurements using this scale. I bought it on Amazon. If I can find it, I'll link it down below, but it's just like a general scale. Sometimes I find it really a lot easier to bake with this, but you know, you can use regular old measuring cups. It's still totally the same thing. So first things first, I have most of my ingredients out here. The table is no longer a mess like it was in my last video that I made, which was a total chaos, like mess all over this whole table. First things first, what we're gonna do is I preheated the oven. Our oven is actually really annoying and it takes forever for it to preheat. I should have probably done it earlier, honestly. We have a thermometer that actually hangs on one of the racks in the oven because it's not accurate at all to what the oven itself is reading it as. It's usually about like 50 degrees or more off from when it says it's preheated. It usually takes like another 10 minutes. So if you don't have a thermometer, I honestly highly suggest getting one. I don't know if it's because it's an electric stove or what, but yeah, it's totally off. So I have that, and any of the tools that I have that I bought recently on Amazon, I will link them down below as well, because we obviously recently moved and I've got a lot of stuff for the kitchen that I found super helpful, the thermometer being one of them, so I will link that down below for you. First things first, we're gonna whisk the flour, salt, and baking soda into a bowl and put it aside. For flour, regular old all-purpose flour, you need 1.5 cups or 200 grams. So like I said, I'm measuring in grams, so just using my scale. Ari is also sitting to the side over here. If you need to make any noises, you can make them, is what I was saying. So let's see, this friggin' oven just said it was all the way preheated to 375, and right now it's at 225. So it's over 100 degrees off. So I highly recommend getting one of those thermometers. All right, 200 grams of flour. Next we need 1 1/4 teaspoons of salt, or 4 grams of salt. I'm using Diamond Crystal. I explained in my last video that I usually use Diamond Crystal. Now it's kosher salt. That is what most recipes usually end up going by. But at home I was using Morton's for a long time. You just have to use less. For instance, this recipe calls for 1 1/4 teaspoons of Diamond Crystal or 3/4 teaspoon of Morton's. It's just a different flavor. I honestly don't really understand it, but I prefer to use Diamond Crystal. I just order it on Amazon. It comes in 2 giant boxes, and I just pour it into this little salt container that I got because I just use it so often. It's nice to have it handy, but the boxes just last a long time, so it's easy to have it in bulk. Next we need 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Oh my god, I need to like open this thing, honestly. I hate baking soda. I hate the containers that they come in, honestly. Like, they need to change them. They really are not very good. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. This calls for 4 grams of the salt and the baking soda if you're not measuring, but I had the teaspoons handy, so I figured we could just use them. So you're gonna whisk all this together, just to have it incorporated. And then the next thing that we're gonna do is probably the most important part of this recipe. The reason why I use this one so often is because it's really unlike any other chocolate chip cookie recipe, because the butter is actually browned. So instead of just using regular softened butter and kind of mixing it together, you're gonna actually take a stick and a half of butter. 1 stick is gonna be completely melted on the stovetop, and wait until the butter itself has kind of like foamed and then gone down. And then you're gonna take cold butter and incorporate it so it emulsifies and creates like a really creamy texture. So I will show you guys that. I'm gonna pause for right now and go over to the stove and brown the butter. And once it's browned, I'll come over and show you guys. If you wanna see in detail what this looks like, just watch that Bon Appetit video that I will link down below, but it's pretty simple and it makes the cookies themselves taste so good. All right, hi guys, I'm back. So this part's gonna happen kind of quickly, but basically I browned the butter just like I said I was going to. The part you wanna focus on the most is once the butter foams, it's gonna turn like this toasty brown color. That's what you definitely need to pay attention to, because I am glad that I made these cookies last night, because I actually tried something different. And last night I used salted butter. I only had a little, I had a half a stick of unsalted and I had a stick of salted. And I don't know, it's the same brand of butter that I always use, which is the Kate's butter. But last night I used a whole stick of salted, and it ended up coming out like really foamy, like extra foamy than usual. And I found it really hard to see when it became browned. And I don't know if it's because it was salted butter or what, but it ended up being like so crazy. Also, feel free to come into the video. This is Leah, everyone. She's just chilling. You all know Leah. So, ask me if I just actually put my whole hand onto the blade of this knife. Oh my god, am I okay? So yeah, so anyways, the butter that I used last night was like so hard to figure out. So I don't know what that was all about. I don't know if it was because it was salted or what. So right now this butter is like super toasty and brown. I don't know if you can see it. What you're gonna do is, I waited like a couple minutes for this to cool. You're gonna put in 1 piece. I usually do 1 piece at a time because I don't want to cool down this whole thing of butter at once. I don't think it says that in the recipe. That's just always the way that I've done it. Is kind of waited for each one to melt to add the other one. This butter should not be sitting out for a long time. It should be cold, because the point of putting the like hot melted butter in with cold butter is that it's gonna emulsify it, and it's gonna end up being like a creamy consistency after a little while. The other thing I wanna mention is definitely use one of these kinds of spatulas, especially when you're browning the butter, because what's gonna happen is the butter is gonna like foam and kind of start like crawling up the pot. And you're gonna use this like, what is this consistency even called? Like silicone spatula to like go against the edges of the pot and definitely scrape along the bottom so that your butter isn't like burning and sticking to your pot. That is like super, super helpful. So this part kind of takes a little while, but the butter itself is still super hot. You're just gonna keep letting these little bits of butter kind of melts into this consistency. Once this part is done, you're gonna add the sugars to it, and then it kind of ends up being like a normal cookie recipe. This is definitely the part that really sets it apart from the rest of it, which is not really like too much of an extra step. I kind of enjoy doing it. And like I said, I feel like I've done this recipe so many times now that it's just normal. It's just pretty normal to me. I've watched the video that I was mentioning before in like Liz and I have watched that so many times to just like fully understand how to make them. We started making this recipe a lot over the summer, and now it's like a weekly thing at my house. All right, I'm gonna do this and then I'll be back. This part takes like a little while. Just be really patient and wait for all this butter to melt in, and then we will be adding all of the sugars. Okay guys, we're back. This butter is all emulsified. It's really creamy now. See?
Wow.
Isn't it so nice?
That's why these cookies taste like caramel.
Yeah, they do. Because you toast the butter.
Caramel?
So next what we're gonna do is we're gonna add 200 grams of packed dark brown sugar. Definitely makes a difference if you're using dark brown sugar or regular sugar. Dark brown sugar is not something that I always have, but lately I've really been trying to keep it in stock so that I can make this recipe. And then we're gonna add 50 grams or a fourth of a cup of granulated sugar. Come on, why isn't this working? There we go. So we're gonna do 200 grams of brown sugar and add it to this. And then we're just gonna whisk it all together. And you are gonna use a whisk. It sounds ridiculous, but it doesn't get really clumpy, so it will end up being fine. And then we're gonna add the egg.
Brave in your mission.
Oh, is that Claudia?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Poetry. This is the funniest one.
Poetry.
I'd kiss him, but you don't feel like Corona.
Alright, that's 200 grams. And now we're gonna add 50 grams of regular sugar.
I can't believe other people feel the same way.
I
feel like it's when I first thought it, I was like, oh, Victoria's gonna be you're such a freak. There's something about his voice. It's it puts me in a trance. I forget every other man I've ever met in my life.
How old is he?
62.
Oh, I just got sugar
62
everywhere.
in the field, number 1 in my heart.
Alright, so now we're going to take a whisk and we're going to whisk all of this sugar together with the butter, and then we're going to add the eggs. And the eggs are going to be 1 large egg and 2 egg yolks.
You want to go to walk?
He is exhausted.
You don't? Look at these dark circles. I'll go. We'll go on a quick one. Okay.
Quick means fast.
Yeah.
That means you'll be more tired.
I told her that you were sort of walking behind me. That's social distancing. We were social distancing for real.
I couldn't breathe. And I dropped all my water. Alright, so this is just incorporated together. There's no clumps. I don't know if you guys can even see that. I am going to go and crack these eggs, and then I'll be right back and we'll put this together. Then we'll put in the vanilla and just continue this recipe. So I'll be right back. Now we're gonna add all of these eggs. So that's 2 egg yolks and 1 large egg. And you're gonna continue to use your whisk and whisk it all together. I also really like that we don't have to use like a KitchenAid mixer or anything like that, because I don't have that here. And you don't have to use a hand mixer, because if you watch my last video, I hate hand mixers. This comes together super easily. This is what it ends up looking like, kind of this really nice smooth consistency. And next we're gonna add the vanilla extract, which is 2 teaspoons. Why do I feel this way? And just add that in to the mix. And then we're gonna start to incorporate the dry ingredients. This part you don't use a whisk for. You're gonna use the same spatula that you used before, and you're gonna fold in the mixture. And if you don't know how to do that, I will show you. You're gonna take your dry mixture and move all this stuff out of the way. Take your dry ingredients and just put in a little bit of it. This is my favorite part of this whole recipe. you're gonna take your spatula and you're gonna kind of go in through the front and like loop it around the side. So you're just folding in the ingredients until it's all incorporated, and then you'll just add a little bit more. This is just a really gentle way to mix ingredients together instead of using a whisk or just using a spoon or using any sort of paddle with like a KitchenAid or anything like that. And it's probably gonna end up being like 3 portions or 4 portions that you're putting in. And just keep going till it's all combined. And it's not too much of a hard dough, so it's usually not too hard to mix together with your hands. What?
Where else? Oh, they're in here. Hey, do you want some glasses? Yeah. What time is it?
5:20. You can borrow mine, Leah, if you want. They're in like my bag.
These right here for you. Erin, can I wear your belly button?
Yes. Yes. You don't want to wear that red ski jacket? Alright, so just keep mixing this together. Last time, I hope you guys make this recipe because honestly, it's my favorite cookie recipe. It's so fun to make. I will say it took me a couple of tries to get used to it. We made them over the summer, like I feel like we made them like 3 times in 1 week because I just like could not master it. We tried so many different ways. We tried it with not just dark brown sugar. We tried it with chocolate chips instead of bars of chocolate, which I will explain in a minute, because there's definitely a difference. I feel like I've had to make this with different types of butter and different brands of butter that I'm used to, and it's just fun to make a recipe that many times and like really know the recipe like inside and out. So if Chris Morocco, if you're watching, this is the best recipe ever, and I am just such a big fan. So this is what your dough should look like. Oh, hold on a second. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, bit of a fiasco. I'm actually gonna wash my hands really quick. Okay, so now let's talk through the chocolate. So what this recipe calls for is 6 ounces or 170 grams of bittersweet chocolate. Okay, so what I was gonna say, and I'll talk through the chocolate basically, this recipe calls for 6 ounces or 170 grams of bittersweet chocolate, between 60% and 70%. I am using this. It is 70% lead chocolate. I will say a couple of different things, but first of all, I chopped up all this chocolate, it's a whole bar, and I am now just gonna incorporate it into the batter, and then we can just go ahead and add it in. But I have definitely made this recipe with so many different types of chocolate. I have made it, last night I made it with milk chocolate chips, and honestly, the chips are just not where it's at. You will see that these cookies can come out a little bit thin, and that's where I think it is so beneficial to use a chocolate bar, because instead, like last night I made the cookies and they were like thin, and then like a bump of a chocolate, and then like thin, and it's just not the same. Like it's way better when they come out like flat in one whole consistency. But I will say that last weekend I definitely made the best version of these that I've ever made, and I used, it was definitely this brand, but I don't remember if it was 60% or 70%. I think it's probably still 70. And I only had half of that, and then the other half chocolate I used was Tony Moly's 32% milk chocolate. I will put a link to that in the description box because this is so embarrassing, but I honestly just bought some from Amazon. I bought like 4 bars of it because it's the best chocolate I have ever baked with. I freaking love it. Let me go get the scoop. I don't think we have a little one actually. So We don't have one of those little ice cream scoopers like I have at home, so I'm just gonna form these with my hands. They're clean. But yeah, so I used, oh my god, this is like so wet. Is this the smartest way to do this? I feel like the answer is no. Anyways, yeah, the last time that I made that, it was the best recipe for using that kind of chocolate. Okay, I'm just gonna drop them like this because doing it with my hands was like honestly super messy. But whatever type of chocolate you have, they'll still come out great. That's just the preferred way to make them, honestly. And if you don't like dark chocolate, you can still use milk chocolate. But I definitely think that using a combination is really good. But if you don't have chocolate bars, you can use chocolate chips, but same thing. It's just definitely not the same. But that's all I had last night, so I did it. But don't stress. I feel like these are not good circular shapes. I'm just doing my best here, people, without one of those scoops. I have one, but it's the big one, and you really need the little one. Alright, I'm just going to stick to doing 6 at a time. I think my oven's preheated now. I'm going to go through this process, and I usually will put them in for 8 minutes. And I just have one sheet tray, so I'm just going to do one sheet at a time. Set up my drying racks for the cookies, and I will show you guys what they look like when they're done. And I also desperately need to wash my hands again. So I will check back in with you guys in a minute. All right, guys, in all honesty, something terrible has happened. And I think I know why, but this is what they look like right now. And I think I had them pushed so far back that that part of the oven that like dips up, they were like this. And so they were like falling. But yeah, these look real bad, and I don't know how I'm gonna fix it. I think I just, oh God. They're gonna stay in for a couple more minutes, but yeah, something terrible has happened to them. This is what the first batch looks like. Definitely not supposed to look like this. I have like a half sheet ones. I might do that instead and just do 3 cookies and just test it and see what happens and let these cool and then transfer them. I mean, they're still gonna taste like cookies, but they're absolutely not supposed to look like this. Great job. Okay guys, I did a test on this little tray with just 2 cookies, and this is definitely what they should look like. Those only went in for 6 minutes and they're perfect. I did put in another tray and made them smaller because I think what was happening is that, first of all, these were at an angle, so they definitely slid down. But also, I definitely was making them too big because, like I said, I don't have that little scooper. So I was just kind of eyeballing it. But these look a lot better. I might do another batch on this, but I also might just keep going with this one and do 6 because those look perfect.